do it.
If anything, I'll do it because I think she's doing the intro. Lucy, you look so hot.
You gotta make me blush like that.
Oh my gosh. Like, Sharamai, don't make me blush like that.
So funny. I also love the illustrations in the book, by the way.
Good, right?
Who's your illustrator?
It's Paper Samosa. She has this great Instagram account. I'll send it to you. She's so, like, I did such little lifting. I literally sent her the book and she was like genius and came up with these ideas.
It's so fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So hello, everybody. I'm Elisa. I'm an event staffer at Politics and Prose Bookstore, and I would like to welcome you to PNP Live. Today's event is in partnership with Anderson's Bookshop and Books and Books Bookstore. We appreciate you joining us today in this virtual format in the midst of these continuously extraordinary times, throughout all of which we've been working to bring you the authors that you love and their new books to our PNP community. At any point during the event, you can click on the link in the chat to purchase Be a Triangle on the Politics and Prose website. So if you look near the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says Q&A. You can click there to submit a question to the author, and we'll try our best to get to everyone's questions, but we do apologize in advance if we run out of time before we get to yours. And I'm assuming there will be a lot of questions for this one, so it's pretty exciting. We're also providing closed captions if you click on the CC link, which is right next to the Q&A box, also at the bottom of your screen. Before we begin, I would like to say thank you again for being here. We're immensely grateful for you all helping keep our business and our spirits afloat. And now I would like to welcome to PNP Live, Lilly Singh, celebrating the release of her book, Be a Triangle, How I Went from Being Lost to Getting My Life into Shape. Actress, author, and creator Lilly Singh brings a message of positivity and mindfulness to her global audience. Singh has found worldwide fame through her comedic and inspirational content, amassing nearly 40 million followers across her social media channels, alongside projects with major Hollywood studios via her production company, Unicorn Island. A native of Toronto, Singh lives in LA and is proudly of Punjabi descent. Everyone, even world-famous actress, author, and creator Lilly Singh, knows that sometimes life just sucks. In Be a Triangle, Singh provides a safe space where readers can learn how to create a sense of peace within themselves, without sugarcoating what it's like to face adversity, including acknowledging her own intensely personal struggles with identity, success, and self-doubt. Singh teaches readers to unsubscribe from cookie-cutter ideals. Singh will be in conversation with Priyanka Chopra Jonas, a multifaceted, talented New York Times bestselling author and one of the most recognized personalities in the world. She has received numerous awards and critical acclaim as an actor and producer, with more than 60 international and Hollywood films to her credit. She's also a global citizen ambassador and is involved in a number of efforts to protect children's rights and to promote the education of girls all around the world. Please join me in welcoming Lilly Singh and Priyanka Chopra Jonas to PNP Live.
Hey. Oh my
What
gosh,
an
thank you
intro.
so much, Alyssa.
That was great.
She was just too nice.
I'm
mean,
gonna
yours
ping
is
you so I
probably
can see your
right.
face. Thanks for doing this, Priyanka.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this. And you know, Lilly, like, I know we go back a long way, but I am so proud of you for doing this and doing it continuously, and, you know, having the vulnerability to share your journey with people. And I mean, I've just written one book and I know how stripped I felt when it came out of, and it was scary for me. I'm used to protecting myself and my privacy, which means my thoughts and emotions. And I know how much it takes, especially to write a book like this. And, you know, to be honest enough to say I went from being lost, you're recognizing that, to getting my life back into shape. And I know a lot of people listening probably feel that same way. So you were not going to write another book after your first one. Like, what happened in the middle?
Yeah, if anyone that knows me knows that after How to Be a Boss, my first book, I was like, this is never happening again. This was way too hard. Books are way too much work. You learn that you don't know how to speak English. Grammar is hard. Everything is difficult. And I really believed that. I thought I was never going to write another book. And then, like a lot of people can probably relate to, the pandemic hit, and it put me in a place that I truly never thought I would be in my life, where all of the busy work went away. And, whereas most of my life, I was too busy to stop and look inwards, I was forced to do that during the pandemic. I was forced to look at my problems, forced to look at some of my insecurities, and forced to look at what lacked in my life, because work went away and travel went away. And I realized that all of those things were how I found value in myself. Like when my work went away and my jobs went away, I thought, what is even my purpose? And that was really a scary place for me to be, to feel like I have no purpose beyond just the things that used to be on my schedule and calendar. So I decided that this was the perfect place to write a book. And that is why I wrote another book. I truly feel if there was no pandemic, I would have never been in that position to have that type of insight. But I went on a mission to kind of build a strong foundation for my life that was beyond just work and accolades. And that's why I wrote this book.
And I feel like that's where obviously being the triangle comes from, right? Is like having a foundation to who you are, which just for me, like as someone who's constantly trying to strive to be the best version of myself, that philosophy just makes so much sense.
Right.
Just like any strong building, if your foundation is strong, you as a person are going to strong and survive, weathered conditions, and be able to survive through storms and still stay standing.
Absolutely.
And so talk to me about a little bit about that. What exactly does a triangle mean, and how did you get to this?
Yeah, I'm gonna be real. So when I started writing this book, I did not know the lessons that are written in the book, meaning I did not have the knowledge. I did not have these ideas prior to. I literally had to go on the journey and do the work to write this book. So I truly am a different person from before and after writing this book.
So the book was sort of cathartic for you. You used it sort of like a journal, maybe?
Yes, not even like a journal. I more so used it to figure out what was not working, because I tried to write it and I would write pages and I would delete them. And I'd write pages and I would delete them. And I was like, I don't know how to write this book because I don't know the work that needs to be done. And I tried to call my manager and I tried to get out of it. I was like, save me, I can't write this book.
Did you know what the book was? Did you know
that? I had no idea what the book was. The book wasn't even called Be a Triangle. I was going to call the book Life Sucks and This Is Why, because I just was feeling so in the dumps and in a bad place. And I didn't know the work that had to be done. And so when I thought, okay, the work that actually needs to be done is to build a foundation. Well, what does that mean? That's just like a fluffy word. Like, what does that actually mean? For me, what it means is I wanted to build a safe place in my mind that I could return to no matter what was happening in my day. So a place in my mind that is not dependent on my job or success or even failure or relationships or love or heartache. It is just somewhere that, just like home is a physical place that feels safe, what is that place in your mind? And so I came up with these 4 pillars that make up this foundation, which is a relationship to yourself, a relationship to the universe, understanding distraction, and implementing design. And none of those things have anything to do with external validation. They're all things we already have, but I'm just choosing to prioritize.
So talk to us, people who've ordered the book and are waiting for the book, and I understand it because I read it, but like talk to us about those 4 pillars a little bit. Like expand on the idea of, if I'm at a place where I'm feeling stuck, right? And I don't know how to get myself unstuck and just move. How do those 4 pillars help me get there?
Yeah, the way I came up with these 4 pillars, and I do believe these 4 pillars can work for anyone, but I highly encourage anyone, if you read the book and you're like, I'm going to add one more, all more power to you. But the way I came up with these pillars were, for many, many months, I would take any conflict or any issue, anything I was struggling with in my life, and I looked at that issue through the lens of these 4 things. And so I thought, when you are in a conflict, let me give you an example. I'm fighting with a friend. Well, nowhere in that foundation is blaming someone part of that recipe. So the relationship with myself means, do you know who you are? What labels are you putting on yourself that are problematic? How are you being harsh towards yourself? Are you being loving towards yourself in this situation? So relationship to yourself is really just self-awareness. It is compassion. It is giving yourself the grace of being a human and ridding yourself of labels like bad and hurt and jealous, but really just giving yourself context. Relationship to the universe is understanding that there is something bigger than you at play, that you are not in control of everything, and that you don't need to try to be in control of everything. And also that because the universe hasn't promised you anything, that when something goes bad, it is actually not a bad thing happening to you. You're just having an experience that is part of the universe. You know, no one is out to get you. Understanding distraction, the third pillar, which is my favorite, is realizing that if we want to operate out of a place of gratitude, which we should, anything that happens in our day that takes us away from that, we have the option to consider that a distraction, live it fully, thoroughly live it, but then come back to places that do serve us. So we don't have to stay in those places of being hurt, stay in those places of being upset. And the last one, implementing design, is literally what it says, designing a life that benefits you the most. Because I feel like so often, I mean, we all do it. Every person watching, I'm confident that there are some things in your life you do that do not serve you as well as they could. Ideas you subscribe to about the job you think you have to have, the relationship you think you have to have, the behavior you think you have to have. I really encourage people to design a life by letting go of ideas that don't serve them and taking on ideas that do. And so I think every conflict in your life you can look at through those four things, and they have nothing to do with blame and hate.
Just to expand on that, because I find it just tangibly hard to do that. You know, I just like, I set expectations of myself, and yes, and this was a lesson I learned in my late 30s. It took me a long time to kind of learn it, but I want you to expand on it because you touch upon this in your book. And before I ask you about service, which is very interesting to me, I just want you to touch upon, how do you bifurcate or differentiate between what you think does serve you and what really doesn't serve you? How do you let go of the baggage of something you've carried your whole life and say that, you know what, this actually doesn't really serve me? Because I know most people struggle with that.
Absolutely. It is definitely not easy. It is uncomfortable, difficult work, which is why a lot of people don't do it. The prime example being in my life, you know, growing up, I was told very specific ideas about what women should do. Like I used to get in trouble for being too outspoken, or for dressing a certain way, or for having certain opinions. And I don't feel like that idea served me well. It has definitely not served me in my career. I have a career because I am outspoken and I do have loud opinions, but it was a very uncomfortable journey to get to a position where I feel comfortable being on stage and talking the way I do, because it resulted in a lot of aunties and uncles scolding me, or people criticizing me, or people judging me, or calling me unsuccessful because I'm not married and I don't have kids right now and I've done things a little differently. So I think you have to go through some discomfort, but I think more than anything, what has helped me is, even if I don't have a solution, it is to recognize that those are still in fact choices and not facts. It is not a fact that women should do this, this, and this. It's not a fact that you have to be in a relationship with this type of person. Those are still ideas, but we treat them like facts and like rules. So even if we understand those are ideas we can subscribe to, at least that gives us the permission to start doing that work, even if it's not super easy and doesn't happen overnight.
And I love this thing that she says, and that's a very wise woman right there, I have to say, to be able to say that.
I don't just take shots at parties with you, Priyanka. I know I'm also that person where I'm like, shots, but I'm also.
Yeah, I'm like, I've never seen this wisdom except through your books. But, you know, like, talk a little bit about that hard work of, you know, of recognizing that this is, of recognizing the fact that this is something that I'm going to need to let go of, and to do the work, and recognizing that this is not a fact. Like, that is such a wise thing to say, because I feel like society and pressures of society, or career pressures you have of yourself, family, what will people say, especially with Indians and South Asians, we come from a lot of, you know, what will people say, what do people think, and that somehow becomes a reality. For eons, women have been told how to speak, how to behave. Like you said, you know, young girls are being raised with with non-facts being facts. And it takes a long time for us, especially as females, to recognize that, oh my gosh, this wasn't really a fact.
Right.
This was just something that was imposed upon me.
Mhm.
And I know there's a lot of conversation around that, but talk to us a little bit about that using your own example of when did that recognition come to you of the differentiation between fact and choice?
I think the best example, I want to actually use the example you brought up, which is what will people think?
Yeah.
Which is very prominent in South Asian culture, but not only South Asian culture, in many cultures
Totally.
across the world. Um, I had to do a lot of work and had to meditate on this a lot, because I think what helped me distinguish it between fact and choice was understanding where that actually came from. So for me, it wasn't just learning to ignore what people think. It was me understanding, why do I even care? Where did I learn? Because
Yeah.
when we're born, kids generally don't really care what people think. It is a learned thing that eventually at a certain age, we're like, oh, now I understand shame. And now I feel like I do care. You look at a young kid, that kid does not care what people think. That kid is doing whatever makes them happy. So I really had to understand, where did this even come from? And I think for a lot of people, it is the result of generational trauma. You know, my parents caring so deeply what people think is because their parents cared so deeply what people thought. And the reason they did that wasn't because they're lesser or they're not smart. It's because in the reality they existed in, it was actually important for survival to care what people thought. You know, my parents immigrated to Canada in the 70s. They had a small knit community of people that was their support system. And so they had to care what those people thought, because if those people didn't think good of them, their support system would literally crumble. And so their survival was making sure that they were accepted into communities and they were accepted as people that were good, you know, upstanding citizens. The issue is that that mentality has been passed on to me now. And now in my life, that's not my reality. My reality is social media and dating apps and in the club. And so when I use the what will people think in those settings, it does not work. That's where it becomes unhealthy and dangerous. So that's me recognizing that I see you, you have this survival thought pattern. I respect that you have it. I know why you had it, but now I'm going to recognize where it came from, which gives me the power to understand it does not serve me where I am right now.
And I think that's such a well articulated way that you put it, because I kind of went through that process myself of recognizing, and I think generational trauma is such a great way of putting it. Like as a new parent right now, I keep thinking about that I will never
Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks. But I do really think about, you know, like never imposing my desires, fears, or my upbringing onto my child, right? Like I've always believed that children come through you, not from you. So there's no like this belief of this is my child and I will shape everything. They come through you to find and build their own life. And I think recognizing that also really helped me. My parents were very non-judgmental in a certain way, and we used to talk through a lot of this. My parents felt the need that, you know, what do people think, and but at the same time I was disruptive, so how did we navigate that? Took conversation. So I think the difference between the generation before us and the generation now, we're like no generation in the world. And you're absolutely, I mean, no generation in history. You're absolutely right about that, because we have information at our fingertips. We know in real time what is happening in somewhere else in the world. So
Right.
how do we as this generation take that power into our hands and change this for ourselves and the future generations that come? And you articulating that in your book and talking to us through that is a really great way of having people recognize that we can break those generational burdens and those generational ties, which doesn't mean disrespecting them.
Right,
Because
100%.
the fight that our families and our ancestors went through, for us to have the freedom that we have, for us to be able to stand our own and demand a place in society, comes from the work that they did.
Absolutely.
So I'm recognizing it, but I think it's really cool that we can reach a place and say, I recognize that, but we need to make a shift so that the next generation doesn't inherit those problems.
Absolutely. I also love what you said about children come through us. I think that's so beautiful. I've never heard someone say that. I think you're absolutely right. And you know what? I'm going to be a little bit real talk. I think as a generation, we will say that, like, yes, we'll be the generation. I do think our kids and our kids' will also look at us probably and be like, why did you have this whack mentality? I'm sure it'll happen and that'll keep happening.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're gonna be like, you thought you were woke, like you think you're all that, like
Exactly.
for sure. And that's gonna happen as every generation evolves. I know, but I just love that we can be such a disruptive generation to this cyclical thing that we've inherited, which if we're aware of, we don't let our community, especially you speak about social media, and you're such a, massive leader, I feel like, online, and having you recognize that, and for everyone that you influence and everybody that follows you. I remember the first time I heard of you was a bunch of kids, which were like 12, 13 years. I was on a film set in Mumbai, and a bunch of these 13, 12-year-olds, family of my co-actors, had come in, and they were going for your show, and they would not stop talking about how much of a leader you are, and how much they think that everything you do is so cool. And that comes from the fact that you are disruptive in this generation. You're going to change how the next generation views us, our communities, and the kind of pathways we make into the future. But talking about going back to the book, because I know we've digressed.
I love it. I love here. I didn't know that's how you found out about me. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I did. And I was like, what's this superwoman? Why don't I know about her? And this is like years ago, like 15, whatever, 12 years ago, many, many years ago, right at the beginning. And that's how I started coming here and we became friends. Right. But tell me, because you said you wrote this book through the pandemic, I wrote my book through the pandemic. It was very cathartic to me on many levels, but did you feel different after you finished this book? You mentioned that was a journey for you, but what was different about it? How has life been since you went through that sort of cathartic process? Right.
I truly mean this. I mean, everyone that's here right now, you already bought a ticket, which includes the book, so I don't need to sell you on the book. So that's how you know I'm being honest. I have never done anything in my life that has helped me as much as this book. No other project I've ever done has changed me so fundamentally as this book. My biggest fear after writing it was that I would fully just go back to my old ways of thinking. 100%. I was like, I hope I don't just go back, because that was my biggest thing. I'm like, I did all this work. I hope I don't go back to my old ways. But I'm happy to say that it's been about like 8 months since I've written the book. All of my relationships are better. My relationship with myself, my relationship with my parents, with my friends. I've had people come up to me and say, you seem so happy, you seem light. And more than anything, I'm having more fun. I'm allowing myself to be more human. So it has really, really changed me. And I think the reason it's done that is because this is not superficial, quick solution, band-aid over an issue work. This was me creating a set of beliefs that I believe can withstand anything to come, which is a really big statement, because I'm in an industry, as I'm sure you know, where things can be so high at the peak and then you can go crashing down. And because I'm in this kind of wild ride, I needed to create a place that could withstand things. And I feel like those 4 things I talked about, nothing is ever going to change the fact that I have a relationship with myself. Nothing that happens in my life is going to change that fact. And nothing is going to change the fact that I have a relationship to the universe. All my other relationships could change, but those 2 truly never will. And so I feel like I've built these pillars in a way where they cannot be altered by just the occurrences of what happened in a day.
There's a quote that Diane von Fossenberg said, which I kind of quoted in my book as well, that the longest relationship you will have with anyone is yourself. And it really, like, when I first heard that, I was like, it's so true, like we go after relationships, whether that's with boyfriends or that's with like your friends, and we have all of these drama, or family. But the most important journey is your journey from birth to death, and that's the most important relationship will be you, which is such an important thing. I had another thought, but I forgot it, so I'm going to digress to something.
Okay, cool. I love it.
Do you call this
out here, folks?
I have so many thoughts. I have so many questions to ask you, because we never sit and talk serious. And I know, it's not the easiest thing to do what you have done. The business of entertainment is hard. And like you said, yes, it's not rocket science. We're definitely not saving lives, but
100%.
the stakes are crazy, and the ups and downs are difficult. And as the only person who's withstanding it, and as someone who has to always have, a strong armor to protect yourself, you've come really far to be able to articulate your thoughts in being able to help others. Would you call this a self-help book?
I mean, I think so. I would call it more so, I was doing an event 2 days ago, and I've never called myself this, but the moderator said, you're kind of like a spiritual teacher. And I think that took me back, because I was like, oh, I don't have any formal training in this. But she explained to me, she was like, no, I think you're a spiritual teacher because you have gone through something and you've analyzed your life and your inner self so much, where you have something to offer people on a deeper level. So I would say it's a spiritual guidebook or a self-help book. Yeah, I would say that. I think the work I've done in this book, I've worked on myself as if it was an assignment. I mean, as if you got a project at school and you're like, I want you to thoroughly understand this thing. That's how I treated myself when I wrote this book. I really dove deep into the ideas. Like, I didn't just, okay, why are you lost? Why are you? Why do you think this way? Why do you have this thought pattern? And I dissected things to such an extent where I feel like I could not go lower and deeper than this, to be honest. So, which means I'm not writing another book. So get this one, y'all, because there's not another one coming.
You feel like by, someone reading this book, they could be the spiritual leader of their own lives too. Because I feel like that's what you're saying in a way, right? That you did the work.
Yeah, I feel like more than anything, what I hope people take away from this book is that no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in your life, no matter how strong you think your thought patterns are, you can always work on yourself. I think we're convinced that there's a time limit to that, but I don't believe that.
I can't change anymore. I am who I am.
But no, I don't believe that. And I'm telling you from experience, I am a totally different person. And not because I've changed so drastically, but because I just reorganized the things that were already in my mind. I let go of ideas that didn't serve me. I've taken on ones that do. I've given myself more grace. And so that's the biggest thing I want people to take away. Even if your pillars look different from mine and you disagree with some of the things in the book, I just want you to take away the fact that you can work on yourself as hard as you work on other projects. You are the most important project. We are just not taught from a young age that we can work on ourselves that way. And I'm trying to challenge you to believe that you can.
Oh, absolutely. I think change is the most constant thing in life. And I think seeking change within yourself, just that's the journey that we're all on.
On that note, Priyanka, I don't know if you ever get this. I've never understood this. Every once in a while, if someone wants to roast me in my comments, they'll say, you've really changed. And people use change as an insult. Like, you've changed, you're not how you used to be. And my question is, why is change an insult? Change is crucial to survive. You have to change when your life changes, when you're in different environments, when your reality changes. You have to change. We've all changed. Every single one of us has changed. I think we need to stop associating change with having this negative connotation. Change is growth, and growth is, we can all agree, very beautiful. So I think we need to change our relationship with change, the word change.
Absolutely. I think it comes from a place of nostalgia, right? Like familiarity. Oh, the Lilly I knew, like I get that a lot. I get people saying that you've changed, you're different. When you were in India, you were different. Now you're different. And I feel like I'm the evolved version of myself. So absolutely, I think that we just need to just two things, definitely be gentle and kind to ourselves, but at the same time, also be gentle and kind to people around. Like, don't go 0 to 200 immediately and be like, cancel this person because they've changed, or what has changed? How you don't know someone else's journey. You're not in my shoes, and you just don't know. And I know it's easy in this world of social media for us to be like, well, comment and it's done.
So but I actually want to speak on this for a second, because I write on this in the book. And to answer your previous question of what do I think this generation will change and disrupt? I think this generation is great, but one thing does concern me. And that is, and this is someone who has a job because of social media. So I love social media, but it is a double-edged sword because of the internet, because of how quick we get information. We have made social media has made the world very black and white, right and wrong, this or that. There's no middle. It's you're this or you're that.
You're either canceled or not.
Exactly. That is not how human beings can operate. Human beings fall in the middle somewhere. And I think the word for that is context. If we stop giving people context, we're going to lose the magic. It's a disservice to human beings, because not everything has to be all or nothing. You know, I think you do have to consider people's context. You have to consider their circumstances. You have to consider their lived experiences, or else you're just dismissing the entire human experience. So that's the one thing I encourage this generation to take into account, is do not lose the context of who a person is and just quickly label them as something, because that's never going to work in our benefit.
And it's not the truth, because I think it's the immediate gratification of our generation that, you know, I'm shopping and I get it immediately, and I want something, I get it immediately. So if I have an opinion, I'll say it immediately,
right,
without thinking about what this person may have gone through. Like, we've become so impatient because we move on to something else
right,
so quickly that we forget humanity within that. And especially right now, where as human beings, the world has just come out of something and going into something even worse. And we're as a generation, as the world, in a really tough place. So if we're tough on people too, it's just going to get worse and worse. We've got to, while we're dealing with these unforeseen circumstances, got to be kind, not just to ourselves, but to everyone around us, because otherwise this world's going to be a really rough place.
I have this quote in the book, which is, and I say it every time I meditate, which is, I am you and you are me, and we are in different circumstances. And I do believe that if you operate from a place of when you go into the world and say, even though I see you and I disagree with you, I am you and you are me, and we are in different circumstances, and we don't need to fight about that. We just need to appreciate that we're in different circumstances. Not everything has to be so polarizing all the time.
Yeah, I think the words to like articulate that would be empathetic, or, you know, to be emotionally intelligent, aware in a room,
Right.
without just, you know, walking into a room, judging someone and making a comment, just being aware of what the other person might be feeling. And I just think that if we inculcate empathy in people, it brings about compassion, it brings about kindness, and just
I don't even know that word you just said. You're so smart and your vocabulary is so good. Literally every time I talk to you, I'm like, I need to carry a dictionary when I talk to Priyanka, because your vocabulary is so effing good. And I'm just like, what are you even talking about? But yes, I completely agree with you. Absolutely.
But speaking, you're so funny, Lil. I want to bring this back to something that I struggle with. I struggle with, my mind pops at a mile a minute. I really struggle with meditation. I struggle with shutting out the noise, especially at the end of the night. And that's been something that I'm working towards, and working on myself to kind of get to a better place where whatever your version of meditation is, right? Like, it doesn't have to be sitting down and meditating in the normal way. Like, some people, working out is meditation for some people. But there's something really interesting you say in the book, that you talk about meditation, but at the same time you talk about being present. Isn't that counteractive? Like, isn't that what meditation isn't?
Yeah, so in the book, I talk about meditation. And on your note of meditation, I do want to say one thing, which is, usually when I talk about meditation, a lot of people say this to me: I can't turn off my thoughts. I haven't learned how to zone out.
Yeah.
And my response to that is, who says you have to? Maybe that's what you need in that moment. Maybe you need to get all those thoughts there. And maybe you allow yourself grace to be like, maybe I just need to do this for a second. There is no right or wrong. I truly believe in meditation. The second thing I will say is, I write about meditation, and then separately I write about being present. And you're right. People are like, isn't that the same thing? When I talk about being present, I mean, throughout the day, actually being a good partner to yourself. So if, like I said, one of my pillars is a relationship to myself. Meditation is, you're alone, you're isolated, you're zoned in on something. Being present with yourself means, hey, you know, when you're at a red light, or when you get into an elevator, are you just immediately doing this because you're so scared to be with your thoughts and you can't for a second just look around and be with yourself? That's what I mean. I mean being present with yourself, of actually being like, you know what, this is how I feel right now. And I'm going to look at that. And that's what I think about that, right? It's about giving yourself the time of day just throughout your day and being a good partner to yourself. I think we're not good partners to ourselves. We like to distract ourselves from ourselves, and we like to pay attention to everything else, and we welcome noise into our life. All of that takes us away from ourselves. Treat yourself like you love yourself. And I tell the story in the book, which is when I deleted social, and I'm not saying the major culprit is social media, but I think it's the most common one is this distraction. When I deleted social media off my phone for a few months, I remember I was at the airport and I was boarding a flight, and I looked up, and I kid you not, I was the only person in the entire terminal not looking at my phone. And so I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And I took a breath and I started to think about my upcoming trip. And I got really excited about it. And I started to think about all the things I want to do. And I started to think about how I was grateful to even go on this trip. And it felt so good to have that energy boarding the plane. Whereas if I had my phone, I would have never had that thought process, listened to my thoughts, even felt like a human being. And so that's what I mean by being present with yourself. It's like, treat yourself like you love yourself and that you want to pay attention to yourself.
I've also sort of become a little cognizant of my free time. Like I was in the car the other day driving. I was in the car and it was being driven. And I remember I usually take that time, it's my office. So I'll answer my emails and I'll be looking at my messages. And I was doing that, and it was a particularly beautiful day. And the sun was, dry, like the sun was passing through the palm trees, and it was a beautiful day in LA after like really cold days. And I remember just thinking about how I missed all of that because I was sitting and doing whatever I was doing. I was on TikTok or Instagram or something. So I put my phone down, and I remember looking outside for a good half an hour. I did that. I thought about how I was feeling. I thought about the things I was going to do. I made plans. I didn't implement the plans. I thought about them. I kind of marinated with them, and I just felt a little bit more wholesome. So maybe that's what you're talking about as well, right? Is like allowing yourself to feel wholesome.
It's exactly that. Think about when you're in a relationship with someone else. They're going to get annoyed at you if you're at dinner and you're on your phone. They're going to get annoyed if you don't listen to them, if you don't actually see them for who they are. You are in a relationship with yourself as well.
Definitely.
So treat yourself. Yeah, you know what's up. We're gonna have to dissect Nick's thoughts
on the phone.
I'm saying treat yourself like you're also in a relationship to yourself.
Yeah.
How would you treat someone you love? Do you treat yourself like that?
Wow. As a business person, because you've built your empire, I would say, with your own two hands. Like you've built it from your mind and your discipline and your ideas, and people don't give a lot of credit to that sometimes. And it's not come easy. You've pounded the pavement. You've made your growth chart yourself, and I'm so proud of you for that, because it takes a lot, especially as women. Business is not the easiest. You're always looked at with a preconceived idea of what you're going to be. You kind of have to educate people about what you bring to the table. And I've never been afraid of that, but it's nice to be able to see people like you find that trajectory and inspire so many other girls, brown girls, especially like you and me, that, can say, wow, I can be a leader, but just by having my own ideas and thoughts. It's so amazing that you do that. And I know that you're a champion of girls, and girl love is such an important thing to you. So this makes me really happy to be able to sit here, dissect your book and your mind. And there's so much I want to talk to you about, but there's also so many questions that are coming in that I'm getting nervous. I'll keep talking to you and I'll miss out on people asking you questions. So
let's do it. I'm so excited.
Should we go to some fan questions?
Yes. Thank you, by the way, as PC is going through the questions. Thank you to everyone that's tuning in. While she's going through the questions, I need to tell y'all real quick. I was in a pickle to find a moderator for this. I sent one text to Priyanka, and in literally minutes, she's like, absolutely, whatever you need, I got it. So she's a real one, ride or die. So legit, you are my hero, and thank you so much. But let's get into some questions.
All right, love you and always here for you. So this is from Sahaja. How do you allow time and space to acknowledge a success you've had? Instead of just moving on to the next big task, it took me time to find success in my field, so I never really feel deserving of celebration. That's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been something I've struggled with for a long time because
me too. I still do.
100%. Oh, I did something amazing. On to the next one. Tomorrow morning, we're doing something else.
Let's not rest on our laurels. Gotta go. Yeah.
I'm going to actually, and I'll try to be quick with this answer. I actually talked to my therapist about this a lot. And she also kind of broke this down to many things, but also I'm going to go back to generational trauma. I get this because when I do something so great, and I've said this example before, when I wrote my first book, it was the biggest deal I've ever done. And I called my mom and I told her about it. And her exact words were, good job. And that was it. There was nothing ever else that she said. And I remember being like, oh, maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she, but then you know what it is? It's that my parents never had the luxury of celebrating things too much because they were always in the mode of problem solving. Like, we got to survive, we got to problem solve. If something went well, great. We can put our energy somewhere else. And so I was raised in this upbringing of like, don't celebrate the wins too hard, just focus on solving the problems. So I'm trying to unsubscribe to that. And I'm trying to now take moments to say, no, actually sit here for 15 minutes. And what I've done is a very practical thing. I relive the entire experience in my brain. So I'll even just tell the story to someone like, and then I was so nervous. And then I got up on stage and they said my name. And I just kind of forced myself to relive it. And I budget time to do that so I can actively celebrate something. Because if I don't do that, I will just be on to the next one and on to the next one.
Yeah, totally.
It's been an active practice for sure.
Totally. All right, another question which I think is really interesting is Palomi Chakravarti. Oh, I lost it. Oh, there it is. What do you mean by providing yourself with context? I think that's really interesting. She also mentioned that her initials are PC. Yo, PC. What do you, I think that's a really interesting question because I think that there's something about expounding to that on that. Providing yourself with context.
Right.
Take us through that a little.
I think that we're so used to blaming other people for labeling us. Like, you called me this, you think I'm this, I'm upset at you, without realizing that we actually do that to ourselves. We label ourselves as things. When we fail at something, we usually beat ourselves up because we say, you're so stupid, you're not good at this. What I mean by giving yourself context is instead of saying you're so stupid, instead say, okay, this is something really tough I've never done before, and I tried really hard at it, and maybe I need to work on it a little more so that next time I can do this. We can see more compassion with that person than just dismissing them with an easy label of stupid. And we do it for positive and negative things. My thing has been, because I've labeled myself a hustler, like, you are a hard worker, you're a hustler. On a day where I want to take a break, I feel guilty because it goes against the label I've given myself. Whereas if I just gave myself some context, like, hey, you're not one thing all the time. You're on a spectrum of things at multiple times that change and shift, and that is okay. It's easier to empathize with ourselves.
Wow, that is so true because I do that all the time. Like, I'm like, oh, you can't have a day where you're just sitting and not doing anything because we're so used to just go. And that was really a big lesson for me this year. I took a conscious decision post-pandemic when I went back to work that I'm going to be nicer to myself. And maybe I reached a position in my life where I have the privilege to do that.
Absolutely.
Or I'm at an easier place in my life where, I wasn't building my career the way I was earlier, where I'm like a little bit more content. Maybe I'm coming from a place of, being comfortable. Whereas when you're ambitious and when you're driven in your 20s or, you're like, I gotta go. So yes, I think being kind to myself came from being comfortable too. But I do think that we can be mindful of that even when we're being hustlers, right?
And I love that you said that because a lot of people say to me, but you wrote How to Be a Boss and that's about hustling and all that stuff. And I agree. I think people are very all or nothing when they think of mindfulness. Either you hustle and you never sleep or you just meditate all day. I still believe in hustling. I am hustling for this book. I still believe in all that, but I believe I can actually have both. I think I can hustle so hard and I can still look out the window for 30 minutes at palm trees. I think there's a way to have both. And you're absolutely right. I think it's also to do with earning that place. I tell anyone that I'll be very real with anyone that says to me, I'm starting my career, what's your advice? I tell them, you got to work really, really, really hard. I don't regret any of the hustle I did at the beginning of my career, but I did it to get to a position where I could have fun and enjoy my passion projects. And I think I'm there. And I think I'm there and I've earned that right.
Exactly. That's how I started seeing it. Somebody asked me a question for an interview or something that I was doing that, what's the change that has been in my life? And I think the change has come from, I worked so hard for such a long time. I didn't allow myself birthdays, holidays, sick days, none of it. And now I feel like I can sit back and say, I worked so hard so that I can sit back today and take that moment. And that's what you work hard for. I tell young people that, you know.
Me and PC worked hard so that every Diwali we can party for a month, because that's what we're gonna do. That's what
For
we're
a
gonna
month, at least a month.
do. 100%.
All right, let's do 2 questions really quickly.
Okay, sure.
1, is this book in Hindi in India? And 2, would you recommend it to middle school, high school children? This is from Angelique Johnson and anonymous attendee.
Cool. I'm not sure if it's available in Hindi right now. With time, it definitely will be. Usually after releasing a book, it takes like a couple weeks or a month for someone to be like, can we do this in Hindi? So I think it should happen soon. I'm pretty sure How to Be a Boss is in Hindi as well.
Oh, sick.
I think so. I hope I'm not lying. I don't have to fact check. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Google. The second question being, I think this book truly is for anyone. I think it's great for graduation, especially for anyone having a life change. But I do really believe these ideas, you're never too young and it's never too early to start. Like, I wish they taught this in school. I wish this was a school textbook. I wish we learned meditation, self-love, giving ourselves context, all these things in school, but we don't. We don't learn to treat ourselves like the most important project of our lives. And so I believe this, if you're someone who has kids or like younger people, I believe this can work for them as well.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. I know we're running out of time, but there are so many questions coming.
Thank you. Is the powers that be? What time is it? Oh yes, the powers that be. What should we do? Should we keep doing questions, or do we have to go? Me and Priyanka don't know anything. You have to tell us what to do.
I just listen to Lily. Whatever she tells me to do, I do.
Yeah, do a few more questions. I'm told we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, we still have time. So yeah, the event runs until about 9. So.
Cool.
Lily's in a rush. I was fine.
I'm not in a rush at all.
You were rushing. You were like, oh, you wrap up.
Superstar, and I'm nervous that I'm making you late for.
I'm sitting here on my couch talking to you.
Okay.
What's
do
better
all the
than
questions,
that?
baby. I'm all for this.
What's better than that? Okay, Priyanka Desirazu. I love your name. Lily and Priyanka. I'd love to know, what are some of your favorite books? Yeah, what have some of your favorite books been?
Ooh, you mean besides Unfinished by Priyanka Chopra? I actually started a book club called Lily's Library. This will be a subtle plug.
Which is sick. And I take so many recommendations off of your book club too.
Thank you. It is, my goal is to highlight South Asian authors and stories, because and I know Priyanka agrees with this. I feel like very often South Asian stories and creators aren't given the credit they deserve, and they are made to feel like they're very niche. I don't believe that. I think not only can South Asians enjoy the books, but I think—
How can we be niche? We're 1/5 of the world's population.
That's what I'm saying. Get with the program. So the books I've selected for Lily's Library are some of my instant favorites. There's Tell Me How to Be by Neil Patel. There's Dava Shastri's Last Day. And then the recent one I just selected was The Windfall, which is just such a funny book. It's literally my aunties and uncles in a book. So I love that. But I also love books from people that I know. Honestly, I'm not even trying to big up Priyanka, but when I read books from people like Priyanka or Jay Shetty or like Payal Kadakia, I know these people and what they've done in their lives. And so I love getting that insight to like the behind the scenes and the kind of the more deeper stories that you don't get otherwise. So I love reading books like that. But PC, what books do you like?
I've had like a lot of books influence me in my life. I was a massive reader growing up. So I grew up on like Enid Blyton, Nancy Drew, and like Tintin and stuff like that, and then evolved into like more classics. I remember like Black Beauty, Oliver Twist. Like I was very literature driven. And then as I evolved, I really started getting into nonfiction as I went along. Some really wonderful memoirs that I've read along the way. Nelson Mandela's memoir was amazing. And then like I also read like just murder mysteries. I'll move to like James Patterson suddenly, and just, when you need— I think that I just have very eclectic taste when it comes to books, and it really depends on how I'm feeling that I pick up a book. I read like 2 books at the same time sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I like reading like 2 or 3 chapters with something else. And then, maybe you're not in the mood to read the same book because it has a different feeling, and then I move on to something else. But don't want to talk too much about myself. I will come back to the lady of the moment. Melissa McDonald asks you, what are your goals for you yourself now that you're focusing more on you?
My greatest goal, and you said this is how I know I've changed since writing this book, because if you asked me this a year ago, I would have been like, my goal is to make movies and TV shows and do all this because I would associate my value with projects and work. But I know I've changed because my answer is actually that my biggest goal is to continue to remind myself I'm already complete and all of this stuff is bonus. The best example being, I just had a really cool show announced. I'm part of the new Muppets show and I wanted it so badly. But the day I got it, I like took active time to sit down and tell myself, hey, this does not now make you the lead of the Muppet show. That is not now your definition. That is not now all you are. This is a cool thing. And no matter if the show wins or loses or goes a million seasons or goes one, you are still a completely complete and whole human being that has her own value. So that is my only goal moving forward, to know that this life is great and I get to do cool things, but it is not how I define myself in those ways.
Yeah, and your choices don't define you. It's more the journey of the sum of your choices is who you eventually are, not the choices that you make.
Are we doing a TED Talk right now? I feel like we are doing a TED
No,
Talk.
honey, that's you. You do the TED Talks. I would listen. Terrifying. By the way, your TED Talk was fire.
Thank you.
You're an awesome orator. I love listening to you. Okay, last one. We need your book in Punjabi, Lily.
I'll get my mom on it ASAP. I'm just gonna fly my mom and like, Mom, do this. Listen, this is a fun story actually. So I am decent at Punjabi. I get Hindi and Punjabi mixed up all the time, and I'm not good enough to ever publicly speak. I can just talk to my friends. But when me and Priyanka did this commercial together, I had some Hindi dialogue, and I've never been more nervous than to say Hindi lines in front of Priyanka. And I remember it was tel ko tel lagao, and she was like, tel. I was like, she was correcting my pronunciation. And that's when I knew that I could never publicly speak. But I'll try to get it in Punjabi.
You totally can. You bust out Hindi and Punjabi so well. Like, I can't speak Punjabi at all. I wish I could.
Really?
I understand it and I can show it off a little bit with phrases and words because my dad was full on Punjabi, but because my mom didn't speak it, we never spoke it at home. So it was always just Hindi and English. But it's I can't wait for your book in Hindi. I remember when I'm going through translations right now, and with the Hindi book, I'm reading it myself because, and it reminded me, I was like, I need to start reading in Hindi again because I'm so much slower in Hindi, and that's highly embarrassing. But
I understand Hindi enough, but I am also that person where if I'm watching a film and the subtitles are there and anyone wears a white shirt, I'm like, oh, missed that. The white subtitle on the white shirt, don't know the plot twist. Don't know that scene was because I'm so reliant on them. But I hope
अब तो मैं सिर्फ हिंदी में बात करूंगी तेरे साथ, जब भी तू मेरे पास आएगी बस हिंदी में बात करूंगी तो समझ जाएगी.
I'm so nervous right now. I'm so nervous right now.
For people who didn't understand, I just told Lily that I'm just going to speak to her in Hindi now, and that's the best way of learning the language.
The good thing about Punjabi, for people that don't know, it's just a series of noises for the most part. So anytime you don't know, it's people understand what that means, So
it's our very own language.
Yes.
Grunts are a big part of it.
That all means something. I'm literally, I just did my TED Talk in Punjabi.
Your TED Talk in Punjabi would be a series of grunts.
I know.
Do you watch a lot of Hindi movies and Punjabi movies?
I
digress.
I try to. I'm a fan of the oldies. I won't lie. I don't watch as many. You know what? I won't lie. I these days I'm like, oh, I can't watch it. I don't have that much time. But now every movie is 3.5 hours. I might as well just watch a Hindi movie because Spider-Man and Batman are longer than Hindi movies.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like Hindi movies have.
Look who's talking.
But I feel like Hindi movies have really evolved as well. I feel like that whole, philosophy of 3-hour long movie with the 5 songs and the set pieces and Hindi movies have evolved from that so much. The series that you see on streamers, it's just a really different industry and a different way of telling stories. So I feel like you should explore some more of them. It's really cool stuff out there.
Some recommendations.
I'll text you.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I will text you.
Recommendation.
But all right, I'm going to take one last question before I let you go, because I saw a really interesting one, which sounds like something I would have been asked at a pageant. So I want to ask you this question. Monica Abad, this is from her. If there was only one thing that you would be remembered for, what would that one thing, what would you want that one thing to be?
Ooh.
Told you pageant question.
This is good. Well, you kind of hit on this, PC, because I've been thinking a lot about what my purpose is, and you called me this, which kind of validated that for me. I have come to terms with the fact that my purpose is to disrupt. In everything I do, from my professional life to my personal life, I feel like it is in my nature to disrupt. And I used to resist that a lot. Like I used to think, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I do the things the way everyone wants them to be done? Why do I always have to break the mold? And it used to,
because normal is boring.
I know, but I remember my therapist used to say to me, like, pick a cause. You're just everything, just pick a cause, like pick a thing. But everything from, like me being outspoken to my sexuality to how I got to my career to everything is just always breaking the mold. And I've just now stepped into that. I think my legacy is, I want my legacy and I want what I'm remembered for to be a disruptor, someone who saw a way of doing things and decided that it could be done another way and that we should be open to doing things another way, whether it's arts, whether it's personally, whether it's mixing business with spirituality. Just in all ways, I want to encourage people to disrupt systems that could be better.
And that's such a great way of, a segue to sort of encompass our conversation, which is really about disruption is the first step towards evolution, right? And evolution that's the human journey.
Absolutely.
And I think that if all of us are just looking at how ideas are the currency of yesterday or of the currency of the present. So if you have an idea that's never been done before, especially in this generation where we can literally monetize ideas. You have an idea, you can make an app. You can literally have a career with ideas. So I always, and I think that's what you just did, is like inspire people to sort of think about what is the disruption you are comfortable to cause in your life, and how is that gonna help you evolve into being the person that you want. Like, this is such an amazing journey, Lilly, and I think most people feel a sense of being lost at some point in their lives. It's part of the human journey. And I think to be able to work on yourself as your most precious project and to come out of the other side and feel like I have my life back in shape is just super inspiring. So thank you for giving us, the tools to be able to do that. And thank you for being a disruptor and a leader in everything you do, and inspo. Love you so much.
You. And I'm going to look right at you and genuinely say, PC, I love you so much. I know this is supposed to end on me, but it's going to end on PC and me saying that PC walks the walk of supporting people. It is not just something she says. She literally, I exist because of people like her and her paving the path. So legit, I'm going to give you your roses for the rest of your life. I think I also sent roses to your house physically, but I'm also going to give you, I was like to my assistant, I'm like, my usual budget of flowers, triple it, send them to Priyanka. But I will even just spiritually always give you your roses. You walk the walk and I appreciate it so much. And I will die on that hill and scream that from the rooftops always. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for the event organizers as well, who I think are going to jump back on as well, are here waiting. And she's like, shut
Thank you for Politics and Prose.
Yes, exactly.
No, we love it. We're so glad to have you both here. Yeah, thank you so much, Lilly and Priyanka, for joining us today, for taking the time out of your probably very, very busy schedules to be here. I'd also like to thank Anderson's Bookshop and Books and Books Bookstore for partnering with us for this event with such an amazing turnout. So many questions, so many comments. I was trying to keep up with the chat. I could not. So thank you, everybody. I'd also like to thank the audience here tonight, as your patronage is what allows us to bring you programming like this. And we wouldn't be able to host these types of events without the book sales to support them. So please support Lilly Singh and Politics and Prose by using the link which we've posted in the chat to purchase Be a Triangle directly through our website. Be sure to keep an eye on our website for current event listings, as we have plenty of events to choose from and to attend virtually and also now in person. Thank you again, Lilly and Priyanka, for joining us today. Keep well read, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye.
Bye.